The Lewis and Clark expedition was only the second official transcontinental crossing of North America north of Mexico by a person not of the indigenous peoples of the Americas, having been preceded to the Pacific coast on July 20th, 1793, by a Canadian expedition led by explorer Sir Alexander Mackenzie. Mackenzie had previously crossed North America in 1789 as well, but had turned north at the Continental Divide, also becoming the first European to reach the western Arctic Ocean.
Another achievement of the Lewis and Clark expedition was that it established friendly relations with some of the Native Americans. Without the help of the Native Americans, the expedition would have starved to death or gotten hopelessly lost on the Rocky Mountains. The expedition was especially indebted to a Shoshine woman named Sacagawea, who served as a guide and interpreter. The sight of a woman with her infant son would have been a reassuring sight to the Native Americans, who may have mistaken the armed explorers as a group of men on a warlike mission. For the most part, encounters between the 36 Indian tribes in the expedition were very successful. Author James Rohn states, "Lewis and Clark matter today because they act as a benchmark by which we can measure change and continuing in everything from the environment to relations between people."
Okay. Sacagawea was a Shoshone woman who accompanied the Lewis and Clark expedition led by Meriwether Lewis and William Clark in the exploration of the western United States. She traveled thousands of miles from North Dakota to the Pacific Ocean between 1804 and 1806. She was nicknamed Janie by Clark.
Over the course of the expedition, the Corps of Discovery would come into contact with nearly 50 Native American tribes. Quickly, the captains learned how many different definitions there really were for the word Indian. The Mandans lived in earth lodges, farmed corn, and were amenable to trade with America. The Teton Sioux slept in teepees, hunted buffalo, and guarded their territory fiercely against anyone who passed through. Whether foreign or Indian, some tribes had never seen a white or black man before Lewis and Clark. Others spoke bits of English and wore hats and coats they received from European sea captains. Over the course of the expedition, Lewis and Clark developed a ritual that they used when meeting a tribe for the first time. The captains would explain to the tribal leaders that their land now belonged to the United States, and that a man far in the east, President Thomas Jefferson, was their new grandfather. They would also give the Indians a peace medal with Jefferson on one side and two hands clasping on the other, as well as some form of presents, often traded goods. Moreover, the corps members would perform a kind of parade, marching in uniform and shooting their guns.
The Corps of Discovery reached the Mandan villages in the fall of 1804 and stayed the winter in Fort Mandan across the river from Kahuna. The Mandan culture, the village, was the focus of political, economic, and ceremonial activity. It represented a collective of households, all striving together to better each family, clan, and the village itself. A sacred cedar post stood at the center of the Mandan village, symbolizing the tribe's primary cultural hero. The post was surrounded by an open plaza, and at the north end of the plaza was the village's primary medicine lodge. 40 or 50 additional lodges populated the plaza. The more powerful a family was, or the more significant the family's ceremonial duties were, the closer its lodge would be to the center. On average, 10 people lived in each lodge. Throughout most of the year, the Mandans lived in these permanent lodges. But in the winter, to avoid brutal storms, they constructed temporary lodges in wooded, low-lying areas adjacent to the river. In the fields that surrounded the villages, the Mandans grew their harvest. Crops included corn, beans, squash, and tobacco. When the fall came, a diversity of Indian tribes and Europeans descended on the Mandan villages, bringing a rich and varied assortment of goods. At the high point of the trade, Crees, Cheyennes, Assiniboines, Crows, and even enemy Teton Sioux could be counted among the attending delegation. Everything from products, horses, musical instruments was exchanged for Mandan corn.
Upon return, the journey turned out to be an enormous success for Lewis and Clark, the men of the Corps of Discovery, and ultimately the United States of America. Peace was made with many unknown Native American tribes, and for once the country knew what lay within their borders out to the west. The success of this voyage was no doubt thanks to the help of many of the Indians through food, horses, and shelter when needed.